So we're going to talk about what we know now, right? This is the conclusion of the scheduled training. Of course, we'll have time for questions and further demonstration if needed in a few minutes. All right, it's just a summary, right? DDs are the former input validation rule errors that trigger on data after posting to improve file processing speed. So remember, CALPADS has grown over the past 10, 12 years. It was very hard to do your work. And so in an effort to make CALPADS more efficient, POST was redesigned, and a lot of those input validation rules were moved to after file processing, after posting. Those are now going to be data discrepancies. The CDDs are the fatal data discrepancies that are resolved on the certification status screen. So whether it's now or fall one in the future, those data discrepancies that you see on the certification detail screen are certification data discrepancies. They are CDDs. When we say CDDs, you could think of them similar to cert errors with a different prefix. CDDs check for completeness and reasonability. So the reason why we are providing this functionality and it's not in its completeness, or it's not, you want to say, why wasn't it tested more? Well, we have these deadlines that are coming. Essentially, you have 2 months into the end of your window. You want to make sure that your reports are complete and reasonable. You need these validation rules to ensure that the data was submitted. When you think about the example, we had students who did not have the parent guardian education level. Not only is that a required field for your submission in previous years, think about that specific data element. That specific data element helps identify students who are socially, economically disadvantaged. If we omit that data, we may be omitting students and not identifying them properly as socioeconomically disadvantaged when we're thinking about report 1.2. And so that specific data element is needed for the federal government. That's your completeness. There were other student information errors. When we talk about reasonability, in end of year one, if you're a secondary district and you have CTE programs, identifying for Perkins, the non-traditional gender is very important. If we don't have the gender reported, or if it's misreported, we might be misreporting non-traditional gender students. And so, there's reasonability there. Does it make sense? Are all the students at our school district the traditional gender taking CTE courses? So that's why you need these additional validations. They can't just be omitted. They can't just be excused and implemented in fall one or in the future. It's imperative that they're here. And so while they're not in their final stage, they are available, and we have to use them to the best of our ability. Validations are always to the benefit of us. It helps us increase the accuracy of our data. CDDs do not exclude erroneous data from certification reports, but prevent snapshot approval. So that's a distinction between those cert errors and the CDDs. Cert errors often will not include a student on your snapshot report. So if you have a cert 004, the student won't be included in your fall one enrollment counts. Those records may not be included in your count of student absent summary. But if you have a CDD triggering, such as the SINF 0453, the missing parent guardian education level, the count will be unaffected. That data is just missing. So it's also imperative that you use your reports as a tool to check for accuracy, right? You want to make sure that you have that reported. The one good thing is you can't certify that report until the CDD is resolved. So if you were to resolve the CDDs first, they don't affect your accounts. So they're not going to be, you're not going to have that same measuring stick if you were in the habit of resolving cert errors and reviewing reports. We always recommend that you resolve your errors and then review the reports. So now that you have CDDs and cert errors, the recommendation stays the same. I would recommend that you resolve all your errors in totality, both CDDs and cert errors, then look at your reports for accuracy. during the end of year, this year, this EOY submission, the CDD counts will update with new revisions. And what we're trying to reiterate here is that list of certification errors. Although the CDDs process on their own timeline, your visibility to the different or to those changes will come with the new revision. So here we have workflow recommendations. And I preface this that we created this slide without realizing, or I did without realizing, for you larger districts, the impact that not having the CDD reports will cause, right? So ultimately, these are just recommendations. They can change over time as we gain more knowledge, but you specifically know your workflow, your processes, and so you dictate what is best, right? You consider everything that you've learned, everything you know, and you will dictate or decide the best method of resolution, right? However, we do recommend that you resolve the CDDs, then the cert errors. Cert errors are specific to a data collection. So you have cert errors for end of year 3 related to absent summary, discipline, incidents. You have cert errors for EOY 1 related to the work-based learning or related to your course completion submission. However, you will have CDDs that trigger across each data collection. The student information is used to identify students in every data collection. Every set of reports, gender, race, ethnicity data is very important. And so if you have a student information CDD, that's going to affect the accuracy of your data in end of year 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so I would think that it would be more beneficial to resolve those CDDs that are not triggering an error right now, those legitimate CDDs, target those first and resolve those first, because they have the potential to affect all those file types. If you have a student with disability that you're submitting course completion for, that student could possibly be in all 4 file types, and student information CDD on that student will affect every report that that student's listed in, okay? So I would recommend that you focus on the CDDs, then the cert errors, depending on, again, what can be resolved, what is not a known issue. Also, resolve your CDDs following the recommended end of year sequence. So when you look at the different CDDs, I think it's logical to start with those that are SENR and then move to student information, program, English language, so on and so forth. This is not set in stone. It just seems logical that if I have a problem with my enrollment record for the student, it could impact, because of ownership, all the rest of the CDDs that may trigger. If I've enrolled a student in the wrong school, I can have a STAS CDD because related to the STAS record I submitted based on the student's enrollment. So I would start with the enrollments. I would identify those, try to correct those, and then move to student information, so on and so forth. It just depends, on your knowledge, your skill, and what is best for you, but that's the recommendation. Then after you have resolved the CDDs, you'd move to the cert errors. And again, at this point, this is what's familiar. Typically, you resolve the cert errors and what for end of year is easiest for you to certify. So end of year 2 seems pretty straightforward, easy for everyone. Not much has changed for the past several years. Then I would move to end of year 4. Typically, the students with disability submission is completed early. And so if that's the case for your LEA, you can LEA approve EOY 4 after you resolve those cert errors, so on and so forth. I would probably try to resolve my EOY 3 errors prior to end of year 1, but you don't have to. I would save end of year 3 because it has your cumulative enrollment for the last approval. I would probably, however, try to resolve those student data errors because they're student data, just like EOY 4, EOY 2, and then move on to course completion, which does have some course data and some CTE data. in addition to, of course, the student data with the student course completion and the work-based learning file. So again, your expertise, your experience should dictate your workflow, right? You're your own project managers. And then the last two, right? After you resolve your certification errors, after you resolve your CDDs, you take the time to review the reports. Hopefully there will be time. You want to disseminate those reports throughout your LEA to your subject matter experts, and then you would approve that snapshot. And of course, for end of year 3 and end of year 4, your CELPA then could consider approving at the CELPA level. So when we look ahead, there's some things we want to make sure that we're aware of. And so all this is new, and it can be frustrating at times. It can be intimidating. But with any new software functionality, it is always wise to expect bugs and future improvements. There's already future improvements like providing you with CDD reports that's in the plan. And then there's going to be future improvements implemented. The CDD kickoff time and completed time were improvements added after having functionality implemented in the test environment. We saw that we needed a way to track the CDDs. And so all those are going to come in the coming months. And right now we are experiencing bugs. It's something that is unavoidable with any software development, any software implementation. However, they're being resolved, as fast as they can be. The data discrepancy full implementation, the ability to be able to resolve data discrepancies after submissions. The data discrepancy reports are targeted for a fall 1 implementation. So the functionality will change again. It will be very similar to what you're going to experience in end of year, but it will change again. It should improve. So that's something to look forward to. Ensure that every approved snapshot has a revision date of after July 6th or later, the implementation of CDD functionality. And the reason why we say that is snapshots were turned on earlier accidentally. And so if anyone has certified and thought they were taking advantage of that, you're going to want to look at your revision date and make sure that any approved snapshot has a revision date of July 6th or later. We want to make sure those CDDs are running and have processed your data just so that, the reasonability and completeness of your reports is as accurate as possible. You want to use a revised uncertified snapshot to resolve CDDs and cert errors that trigger after approval. So after you approve a revision, just like certification errors, as you make changes on in CALPADS, your revised uncertified snapshot will continue to run, continue to process. You don't want to disapprove. You want to use that revised uncertified snapshot to resolve new CDDs, new cert errors, and then make a comparison between the revised uncertified and an approved snapshot between your reports to determine if you should disapprove and move forward. So remember, you don't have to disapprove. You just continue to make updates and changes to CALPADS after approval and use that revised uncertified revision to track changes in cert errors, to track changes in CDDs, and to track the accuracy of your reports. And if it is more accurate and you have no CDDs or cert errors, you can then decide to disapprove and then approve your new revision. So throughout the upcoming year, right, beginning with fall 1, academic year 2022 and 2023, will bring continued system enhancements related to post redevelopment. And so, we're going over the mountains right now, but on the backside of those mountains is a nice downhill. It's going to be beautiful views, warmer weather, right? We got to get over the mountains first. So just remember that, like, it's difficult right now, it's challenging, but the end goal, the end game is to provide a better system. So there's a lot of changes. So if you're new, this is very important. The CALPADS flash messages are coming fast and furious. Since Flash 221, and we're on maybe 225 now, 226, all the changes have been announced in advance, and then changes to those changes have been detailed. So you want to sign up for the listserv. And if you're not signed up for the CALPADS listserv and you don't get the flash message email directly to you, you want to go to the CALPADS communication screen and review those flash messages. Martha just said the most current was Flash 226, which most of you should be aware of because you're in this training. And then we are continuing office hours. It's 2 days a week. Our traditional Q&A is every Wednesday at 3 p.m. But also because the changes are, present challenges, and the resolution to the identification and resolution of known issues come frequently, there's a second office hour or the second session, which is our office hour session every Monday at 3 p.m. And so if you go to the CALPADS user manual, there's a link on the home screen. If you scroll down to the Q&A, there's one on the CSIS website as well. Just remember at 3 o'clock, you just click the link and join a Zoom meeting, and you're welcome to ask any CALPADS related question you have in either session. And so I encourage you all, if you haven't yet, go look at your certification detail screen, look to see if you have any CDDs. And just like your certification errors, you can attempt to resolve those if you've completed your submission. If you have any challenges, any questions, I would encourage you to contact the support desk. I always recommend using the web form at the top. You want to contact us directly. That's the fastest way to get to us.